I'm going to bring in a plane and just scale it enough to maybe be 10 times the size of the shoe, and then we're gonna just align it to the bottom of the high heel. And one of the things that I like to do is look at the bottom perspective view to have even a slight overlay or overlap of the actual heel and the surface, because that way I know for sure it's making contact with it. From there, just zoom out and scale it up to have enough space on both sides. Create an extrusion of the plane upward and then create a bevel on the edge. You can adjust the shape and the segments to fit what you're looking to, if you want it to be smooth or if you want it to bump out like an edge. You can do that as well, but we're just gonna settle for a smooth blend. Now once that's done, we're just gonna go ahead and bring it a little closer, and then to create our platform, we're going to bring in a cylinder. And before you click off, we're gonna bring the numbers to the sides down to 8, and then just scale it down to about that size, and then just gonna move it off to the side. From there, let's go ahead and select hard edges. And then from there, create a bevel on the hard edges. We're going to increase the segments to 2, increase the shape to 1. Then from there, set the mid outer to arc, and then click out. We're going to just go ahead and insert the top and bottom sides, just to make sure our surface is flat and we don't have any artifacts showing on the surfaces. And just go ahead and merge these vertices to make it completely a quad. You can do it for the bottom, and this I'm not gonna do it because the bottoms. Let's tab into the edit mode. Make sure your vertices, you're in vertices selection. We're just gonna scale it down, and then scale the overall shape up, and Shift C to make sure that you're not scaling on the HDRIs. And then we're gonna add an array modifier on object mode, and just make sure the Z is set to 1 and the X and Y 0. And we can just keep it at 2 for now. Let's go ahead and Shift D and duplicate that shape with the array modifier and just adjust it up just enough to where it's on top of the shape. And then what we're going to do is rotate it on the Z axis to where we have some just difference as far as flow of the overall shape. I don't want it to be so symmetrical, so just to break it a little bit, we're just gonna adjust the rotation. If you want to be precise, you can rotate it by like 30 or 45 degrees. Then we're gonna scale it in just to diversify the overall composition a bit. So that should be good. Now once we have this, we're just gonna select both of the shapes and move them towards the center. And we're going to select our empty object. Should have parented the empty object. If I didn't mention that at the beginning, you could have selected all the objects as far as the different components of the high heel and parent them to the empty object. And then from there, it'll give you more control over the entire high heel versus like trying to select everything all the time to move it. it's a good practice to do. And then we're just gonna adjust and center the high heel. I kind of want to increase that top edge just so it kind of really shows out of the frame. And then from here, we're gonna bring in our camera. And I do want to say, when you're bringing in your camera, it helps to have the perspective or orthographic view that you want the camera to be focused on. You can import it from there. If you don't have that, then you can use the camera to view option to kind of select your object, rotate, and adjust your camera towards that. Or another thing that I like to do if I don't use the camera to view is use the track to object transformation feature. So from here, I'm going to change the, do I want to keep the focal length? I'm going to change the focal length. Let's make it a lot more, true to what the proportion would be. In photography, the more wide angle your lens is, the more distortion you generally have. So 85 and up, generally is perfect as far as focal length when you're trying to keep something true to the proportion of what it would really be, if that makes sense. And from there, I'm going to check my color management settings under the render options. I want it at high contrast or medium high. And then from there, let's just go ahead and add I'm gonna add an HDR. I may end up changing it later to more studio lighting, but let's go ahead and add an environment texture. And then from there, I have this HDR downloaded of Studio. And then I like this one right here. You can download this free HDR along with a couple of others from polyhaven.com. And what I like to do sometimes is rotate the actual HDR, which you can do with a node wrangler on the the world shader view. So you could literally select your image, which is the HDRI image, and add a node wrangler to it, which I've already done. And then you can rotate the z-axis map location, and then that will sort of position your scene's lighting to where you want it. This is what I'm doing here. I had it at a different angle before. Depending on how you set up your scene, if it's facing the x-axis, you might be able to use the same angles as I am. If you're using the same exact HDRI, which is the Studio Small number 5 from Polyhaven, and then from there you can just adjust the angle a bit. For me, I like to have the shadows casting off to the side. I think that looks good. That creates enough depth as far as contrast and dynamics lighting the actual shoe. I really like this, so I'm gonna stick to that one. And then I'm going to bring in a plane, rotate it on the z-axis and x-axis to create a light reflector, because I'm going to want the light to bounce off the back a little bit. So if I turn it off and turn it on, you can kind of see what's happening. So that light's bouncing off of that plane that's off to that side. I'm just gonna tone down the strength, let's see, to maybe 0.75. I like that. Let's check. About 0.8. That works too. So it's really well lit. You have enough bouncing light on the back side to where it's not so sharp or so dramatic as far as the shadows. I think that's going to look good, especially once we start adding the textures and colors. So we're gonna bring in a circle geometry shape with the 8 sides or 8 vertices. Make sure the align is set to view, that way it's facing you. If you have your right orthographic view set with the number pad, and from there what we're gonna do is tab into the edit mode with the vertices options and just delete the bottom vertices. And then with the 2 selected, I'm just gonna extrude them downward and select all the edges, and then just ES to scale, and we're just gonna scale it inward. From there, I'm gonna add a subdivision modifier to just make sure everything's smooth, and we're gonna add an edge loop or a couple of edge loops on both sides. With the bottom edge loops, we're gonna go ahead and SZ to 0. We're gonna do the same thing for the bottom to make sure it's aligned horizontally flat, and then just move them downward and just GG to slide that vertices down, or actually let's just go ahead and move that one up and then create a new set of edge loops that we can slide towards the bottom. So we're going to create this arc decor for the background, just adding some edge loops to better define the overall shape of the arc. I kind of liked it the way it was before. Yeah, that's a lot more smooth. Then we're gonna add a solidify modifier and just increase the size as far as the thickness to however you like. Just go ahead and shade smooth, auto smooth. That's looking good. And then let's see, if I had a bevel, what will that do? Oh, it's not helping me very much. So I'm just gonna go ahead and get rid of the bevel. And what I'm gonna do is just slide the solidify upward, and then from there add some edge loops inside, and then GG to slide with the edge selection. Yeah, that works much better than the bevel modifier. And then from there, just tab out and apply that solidify modifier, and then add an edge loop on the outside, and then we're gonna do the same thing for the back. That's looking good. Okay, so with our arc created, we're going to then just rotate it a little bit, scale it up. I'm gonna do a lot of scaling and rotation at this point to just get some interesting placement as far as the arc, so it can look right on the background, or at least right to me. Whatever you're doing, whether it's an arc or circular shape, this is where you have a lot of creative freedom to play around with different elements for the background, as long as it's not too distracting. I think something with repetition makes for an interesting setting. So I'm just going to adjust the array modifier. I'm going to increase it and then rotate that. I'm liking that. So now I have multiple arcs in the frame, but one of the things that I want to do is actually want to reduce the thickness of it, but let's just work on the placement for now. And then our camera, just adjust the camera placement a little bit. And that's good. And just zoom in a little bit. Tight like that. That's good. And then let's just take a quick look in the rendered mode. The lighting, look at this. So the shadows casting, I kind of like it further. That's, you know, the scaling is tricky because I kind of don't want to see the top of the arc. So at the same time, let's just move this background a little bit. For now, I think this works. I'm just gonna go ahead and select one of these parts. Better yet, let's just select the background. Let's create a new material. I can name it to BG or background. And one of the resources that I like to use for color inspiration or color options is coolers.co or colors. I think it's meant to be pronounced as colors, but we'll call it coolers. And from here, what I'll do is if I have an idea for a tone, you know, I can type and search for it directly. They also have topics, and as far as industry or trending color schemes and color palettes that you can just click on, like the wedding, for example, nature. If you are looking for something like earth tones and just greenery, or I don't even know if greenery is the word, but if you're looking for more earthy colors, you can do that. But I know I want to use red, right, for the brand of Nikomura. And so I'm going to sample one of these colors. And the nice thing about the website is you can copy, like when you click on the colors, you can it'll automatically copy it to your clipboard, and you can go back to your menu, and then in a hex code you can paste it, and then bam, it'll show up there. So I really like that, almost tangerine but subtle pastel color. I think that's going to balance well with a dark red or burgundy color. So let's go ahead and sample some of these. Almost maroon. I think that one's maroon. So let's just go ahead and call this platform, and that's gonna be my platform color. It's gonna be dark. I like that. Now I want a leather look. So what I'm gonna do is reduce the roughness to where I can get a bit more reflection and shininess to it, and just make sure it's shade smooth. Then reduce the specular a bit as well. That's looking good. All right. Should I turn it all the way down? No. Let's turn the roughness up on the background. I'm going to turn the specular all the way down on the background because I don't really want it reflecting, and turn the roughness all the way up. And I'm working in my head whether I want the art to be a different color. Let's see. Let's just test a couple of things out. And sometimes I'll mix the colors between the palettes, so I won't stick with just one. Just for experimental reasons. I think that tone for the shoe, it's not too close it's a bit close to the platform, but this is where you get to test things as well. And if you have brand colors, you should already know exactly what you're going to be using for your products or your shoes, or if you're designing some sort of gadget or whatever for someone. Most likely there's branding that's already done for it, or if there hasn't been branding, you're going to have that done. But since the logo and everything's already created, I already know exactly what's going on here. I'm going to sample this almost salmon pinkish color. I'm not sure how I feel about this. Let's go ahead and link these materials. I'm trying to select the seams and then add tones to those. And select the back ones as well. The inside label. I'm wondering if I should change that color. Let's try something darker. Paste. I guess I didn't select it. Let's try it again. Paste. There you go. I think that's better. At times I will have doubts, but really I think it needs to be darker, because the lighter part of it is a bit distracting for me. So I'm just gonna go ahead and manually adjust the tones. I'm feeling that a lot better, so I'm gonna add that same dark tone to the top strap. Yes, it is coming to life now. All right. Now for the metallic elements, which is going to be the detail, the detail on the rear of the heel, the detail towards the back of the heel, all that is going to be metallic gold. I'm just gonna name it metallic and then paste that tone that I got from the website. I like that. I'm just go ahead, turn the roughness down a little bit, not all the way, and then just apply that same material to these different parts. Select those, and that part I'm gonna make darker, and this one metallic. And if you're planning on testing on like multiple different color combinations, a good practice to do is to link your materials. So you can Control L to link all your materials for certain parts and objects if you have them selected. So that way when you update one, it'll update the other objects. So now we're gonna just split the screen, and then for this shader, I'm gonna duplicate it. And this is where I'm going to start experimenting with textures. So I'm just gonna go ahead and add a let's start with a wave texture. I sort of want to see how that's gonna look. I'm gonna connect that to the normal, and then bring it down. Just switch from generated. Nope, let's go back to vector. What about UV? What does UV look like? Object. I think object works a lot better. So I'm gonna go ahead and bring in a bump vector, and then connect the color to the height, and then just scale this down. I'm not liking what's happening to the side of the hill. I kind of like the texture of the wave on the front part, but let's see if I unwrap it, if it changes. Nope, it's not working. Okay, so I don't like these like shapes right here. And I could create a completely separate or duplicate texture for it. I think that's a lot of extra work. So I kind of don't want to do that. Let's bring this down a bit. It could be interesting to leave it like that, but I like to be very intentional about what I'm doing. So, no. Let's just distort it a little bit. That's working. So this sort of gives a rough letter feel. But let's change the texture. Let's change it to magic. Let's check. I don't know if you can see what's going on, but I'm gonna increase the size of that and delete. Reduce the strength, add some distortion. I'm not feeling that. Let's try a noise texture. And let's connect the fractals to the height. Nope. Let's go back. Let's go back to... So the Musgrave and the noise sometimes can create a similar effect, but I think this is gonna do for what I needed to do, as far as the bumpiness of the overall material. But I gotta dial down the strength. Yeah, this is gonna be the winner. Okay, so from here, let's just adjust and play with the roughness. That's good. That's good. So there's just enough reflection on the bumpiness as far as the texture to create a more interesting light effect, to where it's not like latex glossy, right? But at the same time, it's not too bumpy. It's just so subtle and it's soft. That's working out. Okay. So I'm going to copy and paste the Node Wrangler part of it with the map and then the texture, and just reconnect them to the burgundy, the darker area. Okay. So I've already designed my logo, so I'm going to go ahead and change. Let's see. So I'm going to change that Musgrave texture to an image texture, which is Shift S. You know, if you're not familiar with the shader editor, yeah, I recommend just going in there and then connecting things. Just testing and trying things out, because you'll get to not only discover what each tool does, um, but it'll build a familiarity for you. And you can also watch a lot of tutorials on YouTube that um, show how to create fully procedural or PBR textures. But I'm going to swap that Musgraves out for an image, which is a transparent version of the logo. And I'm going to unwrap. I was just trying to see if it would show. But what I'm going to need to do is unwrap that part of the hill. So I'm going to go ahead and just select A to select all of it. And then just UV unwrap. Let's see. Why is it not showing? Let's go ahead and do smart UV unwrap. Nope, that is not what I want. Okay. What about... No, it seems like I'm going to need to like select the individual faces. So what I'm gonna do is select the faces that's at the top area of where I want the logo to show. So I'm just gonna come in here, and to have a bit more control over the UV unwrap, I'm going to create some seams. It's kind of hard to see, but what I'm doing is selecting the edges around like the sides and then the bottom, and then marking them as seams. And once I have that, then I'm gonna unwrap it again, and then it should, let's do it again, unwrap, there you go. Then it should separate them into those parts, you see. So like there's that bottom part, the front part, and then that wrapping around back part. That's the one I need. So I'm going to go ahead and scale that up. Then just adjust it to the side that the actual logo is going to show on, or where I want it to show on. I'm going to move the other UV parts off the area, and for some reason it's not showing, so I need to change the alpha from straight to none. It's sort of showing, and then I need to change one more setting. So I need to change the sRGB to non-color, and the repeat to extend. Let's see. Okay. Let's just go ahead and select those sides and move them over. Let's just rotate that. And flip. I'm not sure you can see. Okay, let's zoom in. Now it's starting to show. There is something I need to mention as far as the bump vector node that was added to the image. Because it's not soft, there's a technique that you need to do to where you need to soften the edges. That allows the bump to create more depth. In this case I did not do that, so it's quite sharp. And one of the things that I'm gonna do is just to dial it down really softly as far as the strength of it, to where it doesn't doesn't display as such a harsh embedded or embossed element to the heel. So that works. If you change it to 2, it becomes harsher, but let's just take it to 1 and move on to the next part. Going to replace the Musgrave texture on the label with an image texture, which I'm going to bring in my label. I'm going to go ahead and unwrap it, and actually let's just go ahead and select these faces and unwrap. And just rotate it 90 degrees to set the Nikomura in the middle. Right now I have the PNG file with a transparent background. I actually have one with a solid color that I want to show, so I'm gonna go ahead and just, let's see. I'm going to swap out that image with a more solid background image. I'm gonna select the faces of the label and unwrap, and then just rotate to 90 degrees to get that label in the center. Now once you've done that, you can adjust your scaling to your liking. The inner label is not going to have any really texture on it. It's going to be soft as far as roughness is concerned. And again, it's a detail that is going to be viewed from far away as far as in the render. I may have a close-up shot with the camera where I actually show it, but it's not going to be focused on the texture, rather more than on the brand name. And then with the sides, what I'm going to do is add a separate material without the actual logo on there, but with the same color. With the side selected, I am going to create a new material and just delete the image. Can sample the same tone and color from the actual label in order to make sure that nothing shows on the edge. That's pretty much it. There you go. And even with like the difference in the brightness as far as the dark burgundy, dark maroon, or velvet color, whatever you want to call it, as in comparison to that a lighter tone color of the label, you could add a hue and saturation to it, you know, and then just adjust the hue and the saturation level until you get something that's closer to the actual tone of the shoe. And this is an example of that. You can literally add a hue and saturation between the actual label with the colored background, connecting the base color, and then just adjust it that way. And I just want the roughness up, bring the specular down because I don't really want it reflecting much. And yeah, that's it. With the final detail, you can literally render an image where it's slightly off-centered or dead-centered. You can animate it to where you're panning, sliding the camera to the left, which is panning the object to the right. You can set different cameras at different angles to capture the different details that you want to highlight for your product and then animate it. But this is literally one of the ways you can set up your scene to be interesting as far as visually captivating whoever is going to be seeing your product, whether it's an investor or potential future clients or customers who are going to purchase your awesome shoe. If you made it through all 4 parts of this tutorial series, thank you for watching and following along. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because I will be creating more shoes where I'll be sharing the entire process with you guys. Until next time.